This is New Brunswick's independent community channel, CHCO-TV. We live in Charlotte County.
Well, good evening once again to your turn. This is the third, and to remind you once again, as I did last week, that's my golf shirt. I'm going golfing soon, maybe one more week perhaps, maybe not. This is John Smith. This is, of course, a community channel, and John's from our community, and he's a hockey fan. So he's here with us to just chat about various things and to talk about any aspect of hockey. If you want to talk and join us, we're available on the number you see on the crawl around the bottom of the screen. And this week, even though I promised to do it last week and typically didn't, I have my trusty iPad here with me, and the Twitter is up. It's Winsford99 is the Twitter address. If you want to send questions to Winsford99, I'll get them while we're here, and we'll discuss them. And John, unfortunately, is a Leafs fan.
Oh, I know, it's brutal.
Is it? What's it like being a Leafs fan? My son is a Leafs fan, and it's his anniversary today, his wedding anniversary in England, and he says that the wedding day was the greatest day of his life, and if the Leafs had ever won the Stanley Cup, he might have a higher bar to clear, but because they haven't yet, and I said, well, you know, probably it's your 7th anniversary, but your chances of lifting silver are better than the Leafs. So that's right.
It's terrible. I think it would almost be as bad being a Sharks fan, though. At least my expectations aren't too high every year.
Well, I don't know. Is it worse to lose, to go up 3-0 and lose the next 4, or to be up by 3 goals in Game 7 and lose?
That is the most hard memory to live down.
I was watching that. It must have been tough. Right?
It was terrible.
Yeah.
If I would have been watching in 94 or 93, I guess I think it would have been just as bad.
You know, I was watching that one, actually. I was there, and I covered that series flying coast to coast. That's Toronto and Los Angeles, for anybody who's forgotten that. And Leafs fans to this day, you couldn't have been there in 93. You're not old enough, are you?
I would have been 4, but I wouldn't have been old enough to remember. So that's why I said that's my biggest heartbreak. But as a Leafs fan, of course, you're still whining about the Gretzky ice stick, which you didn't see. No, not live anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so you didn't see it, and that puts you on the same level as everybody on the ice and everybody in the stand. The Bob Cole spoke about that, the announcer, and he said, oh, it looks like Gilmore's been hit with the puck. He didn't see it. The referee, Kerry Fraser, didn't see it. Experienced referee, very experienced. 2 linesmen didn't see it. And most of the Leafs, if you talked to them, they didn't. Nobody knew what had happened, but Gretzky had accidentally clipped Gilmore. And so the Leafs fans seem to think that this cost them the cup. Apparently, nobody else on the Kings could have ever scored. So, anyway, what do you think about the Leafs these days?
They could be better. They could be worse. I think they've got potential. I don't really like Carlisle's system. I think Carlisle's got to go. They've got the potential in the defense. They just kind of fiddle and faddle with the puck and seem to give it to the other guy.
Oh, why do you think Carlisle has to go? Just because they're not organized enough?
They're not buying the system, and if your top line, your number 1 line, is getting outplayed by a 4th line, then something's wrong. I also think maybe they need a little more size and grit or something to go with Kessel and Bozak.
So would you blame Brian Burt for giving away Tyler Seguin and Dougie Hamilton to get Kessel?
Yes, I would.
Well, we agree on that one. Right?
That was one of the worst moves the Leafs have done, in my opinion.
You were saying before when we were talking about this that you think the Leafs might get Eric Staal.
I think it's a potential. I don't know if I would necessarily go for Eric Staal. He's kind of going past his prime, and then to give up on Kadri and Gardner would be a pretty steep price to pay, in my opinion.
Well, if they could get him for Kadri and Gardner, I think I'd be tempted to do it. Eric Staal is a really quality player. He's a big man, and he plays hard. Kadri is something of a sniper, and I think he's already been warned by the league about diving, because he was the league's leading diver last year. Gardner is very, very soft. He needs probably what you're saying. He needs a different coach, I think, and maybe they woke him up sitting him down for a couple of games there, but this guy loses the puck behind his net too often, and that's a recipe for disaster.
I think one of the worst moves the Leafs did was get rid of Pat Quinn instead of John Ferguson Jr.
I knew Pat very well, and I know John Ferguson very well, and I know his father very well, the late John Ferguson Sr. Pat Quinn was, in his day, a great coach, but unfortunately that was the 70s. And I know that when Pat was running the Leafs, he just didn't do anything. He didn't do the things that Pat Quinn can do. He just let the players do what they wanted to do. He never talked to them. It was always a laugh when you'd be out of town or something, and the Leafs might have had a comeback or maybe played badly for a couple of periods, and the media guys would say, well, what did you say to your team after the second period or after the third period if we went to overtime? And Pat would say, well, they know what to do. That's because he never talked to the team. He never said anything to the team. At any time, he never said anything to the team.
They seemed to nosedive after they got rid of him.
Yeah.
They did lose a lot of players too,
Yeah.
but they didn't really seem to get back to the playoffs.
Well, yeah, and the thing about Pat is that I thought it was a shame. It was like, sometimes you see a player that hangs around too long past his prime. And I thought Pat did that because he was such a good coach in his day, and I think his team, I believe the Philadelphia Flyers in that era, still holds the record for the longest
win streak or
undefeated streak. Yeah. And,
35 or 37.
Yeah. And I don't know if he would be much different than Carlisle. Really, they're more or less of the same era. But and now, of course, the talk is about getting Mike Babcock.
I would love to see that. I think Babcock's a great coach, and if anybody could really develop some Leafs players into getting some good habits, I think it would be Babcock, whether or not he'd want to go to a losing team or a team that doesn't seem to play well under pressure. Or
yeah, that's a good point, but I guess a guy like Babcock would do that. I know Mike pretty well, and I know that he is a student of the game. He's a very classy guy, very, very classy guy. He does the right thing at the right time. And he spent a lot of time talking to Scott Bowman, which is never a bad idea if you want to learn about coaching, because the two of them overlapped in Detroit. And for a long time, Mike would talk to Scotty every day, just as in his day, Scott Bowman used to talk to Toe Blake, who was long before your time, but is one of the great coaches in hockey history. And Mike, now I think the problem, if there is indeed a problem, is that he wants more money than the general manager gets. And in the National Hockey League, that isn't really the way things are done. Now, in other sports, it is.
Yeah, and football especially.
Yeah. And I think probably in basketball too, although I don't know that much about basketball. And I think the time is coming because for years and years, the NHL coaches have been a neglected group. And I remember very well a year Scott Bowman was coaching the Pittsburgh Penguins against Chicago and in the Stanley Cup Finals when they won. And I was covering that, and they were having one of these big press conferences down in Chicago Stadium that they have down there, and all the assorted media are there. And I'd just done a story that came out in the paper that day in Toronto that Pat Burns had been hired in Toronto. And I said in there what his salary was, and I can't remember the exact figure now because what is that, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
but I think it was around $300,000. And Bowman came in and took about 2 questions. He's supposed to stay there for about 20 minutes up there. And he saw me and he said, oh, that's it. And off he came. Got off the stand, came around, walked up to me, and he said, did that story on Burns, eh? I said, yeah. He said, is that number right? I said, yeah. He said, do you think I could get that much? I said, well, I don't see why not. You're a better coach than Burns. You've been doing it longer. He said, well, I never made that much. I said, well, then maybe you should get an agent. So we went back to his hotel and we talked about it over lunch and everything, and he got an agent, and then he ended up getting a lot better money. But to think that in that era, that a guy like Scott Bowman was making $200,000 or something for coaching a Stanley Cup winner.
One of the best coaches of all time.
Oh, yeah. and probably the best. I mean, he won 9 Stanley Cups, and a great mind. I could tell you Scott Bowman stories all night. If nobody calls in, you might hear some of that. You might hear some anyway. But to think that was the case, and then of course it changed. Now the coaches are making big money, and what happened there was Cliff Fletcher was the general manager in Toronto, and Cliff had a certain character trait about him. He was generous, and if a player or through his agent came and said, we'd really like X, and even if it was above the norm, Cliff would always say, yeah. He was well known for giving guys good money. But if they asked for too much, if they got greedy, Cliff got really mad and dug his heels in. And so most agents knew, you can get a nice deal off Cliff, just don't be greedy. And so Pat Burns got a very nice deal off Cliff. And then subsequently Scott Bowman did. And then after taking Pittsburgh to the Cup, then he went and took Detroit to a few cups after that. Yeah. So anyway, that all brings us back to Babcock today. Can he get more money than Kenny Holland? I would say, what do you think?
I think he can get more money than Ken Holland. I don't know if he can get it with Detroit. I think he may end up somewhere else with more money, but I don't necessarily know if Detroit will.
Well, that's a possibility, but this brings in another thing, and I know we ramble a bit on this show, but I try and give you the background to some of the things that are going on around the league. I don't think there's a better owner in the National Hockey League than Mike Ilitch.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And even most of the players, from my understanding, is it's usually 3, 4, 5 years as a prospect before you make it to the Red Wings, and their prospects seem to flourish when they do hit the NHL, rather than pull in Nail Yakupov or something like that.
Because they've got a good organization, and it's solid all the way down, and
they get a chance to develop rather than going against 20 guys that have been doing it for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And they're that much better. In my opinion, that's one of the reasons Edmonton is still struggling, is they rushed their prospects. They didn't give them a chance to develop. They drafted them, and they're just like, hey, you're 19, you're playing top-line minutes.
Yeah, I think that's probably the Gretzky holdover.
Yeah.
Because Gretzky did it, and the guys that are running Edmonton all played with Gretz.
Yeah.
And so they think, well,
everybody
18-year-olds can do it. But Gretz did it. Well, there's no more Gretzkys around. Guess what? But the other thing about Mike Ilitch is, if you remember when they had a really good team and they just got a big TV contract, every seat in the building was sold, and he went out and got Luc Robitaille at great expense, Brett Hull, and somebody else I can't remember. The point is that he didn't have to do that. As an owner, he had every seat sold. And he had a big TV contract they just renewed for 10 years. So he can say, well, that's with that, then I've got all my money coming in. I don't care. Yeah. But he didn't, because he said, the fans have always supported me, and I always like to feel that this is more than just a sporting enterprise. And he won another cup with Robitaille and Brett Hull, who were very expensive players, believe me. So I think what might happen here is that he'll probably give Kenny a raise. And maybe Kenny makes $1 more than Mike Babcock, but Babcock will get the money he wants.
Detroit's got to be on the verge of rebuilding, I would think, soon. I mean, Zetterberg and Datsuk are getting in there.
Yeah. Datsuk's supposed to come back this week. He's been out all season. And
that'll certainly help. He's, I think, 35, 36, though, so I mean...
And Franzen's no spring chicken anymore either, But these young kids they've got there, Thomas Tatar is very good.
Play very well. Gustav Nyquist.
Oh yeah, he's really good. And
they draft very well, Detroit as well. I seen an interesting stat on the Leafs Detroit game or whatever, and it showed I think Detroit had 17 drafted players on their team compared to Toronto's 5, and then they had 12 that were traded for. And then you can also probably tell the chemistry amongst guys that have been drafted and brought up through the same system, rather than 12 guys that have been brought in from different systems and brought up different ways as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, in Adirondack, their farm team there, the coach knows to play the way that they're going to play in Detroit, so it's not a big problem when they switch it and everything when they come up. So, yeah, and the years and years that they went without a first rounder. And everybody says, oh, you can't.
They traded him away.
Yeah. Well,
for guys past their prime,
Yeah.
they were good guys. Gary Roberts, Joe Nieuwendyk, Ron Francis, but
No, I'm talking about the Detroit.
oh, I mean the Leafs didn't have
Oh, yeah.
first rounder for years either.
No, but Detroit went a lot longer than that. You know, I think they had 3 first-round picks in about 20 years, something like that.
Detroit scouts do very well overseas, though.
Oh,
it
very,
seems
very
like
well,
they-
yeah, because that's why they could do it. They had all these 3rd and 4th rounders and everything.
That ended up being great players.
Yeah. And Kenny Holland is one of the sharpest minds going. People don't understand this sometimes because Kenny's quiet and he doesn't make a big fuss and all this sort of stuff. But remember before the last Gary imposed lockout, how the league started screaming about the fact that some of these teams were giving out these long-term things. So you'd give out, say, a 15-year contract to a guy who was only going to play 5 more years. So you pay him 10 for 5 years, and then you pay him $1 million for 10 years, right? So now it's a $60 million contract, but it's over 15 years. So he's making $10 million now, but the salary cap average is only 4.
Yep.
Well, who started all that? That was Kenny's idea. And you remember when Chris Chelios played and they gave him a new contract and he was 42 or 44 or something? Everybody said, what a stupid thing to do. Give Chris Chelios that contract. He can't play. No, he couldn't play hardly. But after that, every time they wanted to give some long-term contract to guys like Franson and Zetterberg that extended to the time a guy was 45 or 46, they said, Chris Chelios did it. He was on our team. You can't stop us doing this. So that's why Chris Chelios played that long in the league. So
That's pretty cool.
anyway, what do you think about Montreal?
I like Montreal, but I think they've gotten a little lucky. They've played well, but they haven't really asserted their dominance on teams that come from behind and played the catch-up game and relied on Price and Subban to pull it through. Mind you, both of them have, but...
Both of them have, and I don't see any reason why they wouldn't continue to do so, really. I mean, they are both dominant players, and they're both young.
What did you think of the PK Subban contract?
I had no objection. That's the way the league is going these days. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago, and you know, it goes back to the concept, if you're going to have a salary cap, which Gary seems to want, well, he does want because it makes the owners richer. If you're going to have that, you're going to have a situation where you've got X dollars in the pot, and the big dogs are going to go to get the bowl first. And he's a big dog, and what are you going to do about it?
I think he deserved it. He played very well, and he's...
what would they be without him?
Well, exactly. Had Montreal bit the bullet 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, I guess it was now, instead of giving them the bridge deal, they probably would have got away with $6 million at 8 years rather than...
They got the bridge deal, so he was in danger of becoming a UFA, unconditional free agent, and so they had to do it. And I don't really see a big problem with it. And imagine what they would be without him on the team. And then you say, well, what would you rather have, your $9 million or what? And there was a little bit of fuss around the way they did it, but that's a good management team in Montreal. Very, very good management team. I mean, if you read somebody like Bruce Arthur in the Toronto Star, he'll tell you can never talk to Marc Bergevin, that he just doesn't talk to the media. But the last time I was talking to Marc Bergevin one-on-one, which wasn't long ago, we talked about what he does with his front office. And there's Mark himself is a very sharp guy. There's Larry Carriere, who, if you're a hockey fan, you know Larry Carriere has been around since, played for Buffalo in the 70s, another bilingual guy, good hockey man, originally from Montreal. There's Scott Mellanby. If you don't know Scott, you should. He's the captain of a number of teams where he was. He was going to be a really, really great player until he got involved in a bar fight up in Northern Ontario during the summer. And he wasn't a fighter. He was trying to be a pacifist in this thing. And he had come along he was from Toronto. His father, Ralph Mellanby, ran Hockey Night in Canada for years.
Okay.
And then Scott was a really good, solid player. And it looked like he was going to be more than just a player. He was going to be a real serious star.
He was a gritty player, right?
Yeah, but he became that, but he looked like originally like he had a lot of real good talent, and so he was going to be more than just a gritty player.
Right.
He was going to be a frontline player like a Malkin or somebody like that, you know, maybe not a Gretzky, but not far behind it. So he tried to break up this fight at this bar, and somebody broke a bar and slashed his arm here.
Ugh.
And he was out of hockey for about 2 years, I think. And then they had a trial when he sued. I was called as an expert witness to testify that he would have been a really, really great player. But now he was only an ordinary player, and that's what they were claiming damages and everything. But the fact remains he's a quality person as well, and that was not changed by the cut on his arm. And he was the captain wherever he played, and he was always really, really highly regarded by his teammates, and he knows hockey. So he's in the front office as well. They got Rick Dudley, who basically built the Chicago Blackhawks team that won the Stanley Cup. Then he went to Leafs for a year, but Brian Burke was such a genius, of course, he didn't need Rick Dudley, drove him crazy, so he left and he went to Montreal. So there you got Mark Verchevin, Scott Mellanby, Larry Carrier, and Rick Dudley. And Mark told me, he said, we never make a decision without all four of us talking about it extensively. I never say, I'm going to bring in this guy and leave the rest of them. He said, we talk about it at length and we make the right deals. And they brought in Tom Gilbert, who had been in Edmonton, hadn't been lately, but he was originally an Edmonton guy, and Mike Weaver. These guys are good, solid, steady defensemen. And, you know, if you think back to the way the Wings that we were talking about it before, they'd get their team and then they'd pick up other guys who other teams said, you know, he's not really that good, like Larry Murphy from Toronto got booed out of there, you know, Bob Rouse, another guy. But they really solidify the defense corps. And so that's what's happened in Montreal. And so, no, they're not going to be flashy, like you say, but they're going to be hard to beat.
Oh, you're right. They don't seem to give up. That Brendan Gallagher seems to have a lot of heart, just a little engine that could just...
Yeah.
He must not be too much bigger than me.
He isn't. No, he's 5'9" at the most.
Yeah, and I'd say I'm 5'6". So and then he's just right in the dirt in front of the net, battling Chara or whoever, and right in his face. And always got a smile on too. Like you see him get up after he gets checked, and he's smiling. So
you have to wonder how long he can keep on doing this.
It'd be hard on the body, but I mean, St. Louis done a pretty good job for his 15 years.
He didn't play like that, though.
No, he did get a little dirty, though. Not too much, a little quick.
He doesn't take that kind of pounding, does Martin St. Louis. I don't know how long he can do that. I hope he does, you know. I like to see it. And so, anyway, I've got a list here of things that have been happening this week. The big one today, of course, is Slava Voinov in Los Angeles. Los Angeles Kings defenseman has been charged with assault of his girlfriend. This doesn't happen very much in hockey. This is not the NFL, it's not the NBA. These kind of things don't usually happen in hockey. And I must say, before we discuss this at all, that he has not been found guilty of anything, and that you have to be very, very wary of reading things in the media in situations like this. I mean, you may remember the case where the Duke lacrosse team was banned, and they banished the sport all because they had allegedly raped somebody, and it turns out it was total fiction. It didn't happen at all. And there was another incident, I guess it would be in the late 80s. I won't mention the names of the players involved because it wouldn't be fair, but 3 of them were charged with raping a girl in a hotel room after a game. And the media got all over that and had them convicted and was ready to have them sent away for 10 years and all these, because it was disgraceful and a black mark on hockey and on and on and on. And then it turned out under examination that, in fact, the girl had been a willing participant and got home late, obviously, as you would if you're in a hotel room with 3 guys. It takes a while. And then her boyfriend, who had come home earlier, someone to know where she'd been, and she told him she'd been raped by these guys. And that's where the story came from, and there was absolutely no truth to it at all. And then there was another incident, if you may remember, involving Patrick Roy. I can mention his name because this one was proved publicly to be wrong. But again, the media was all over Patrick, saying he had beaten his wife. And if the real true story there was that he had got in his argument with his wife, and probably not the first husband to do so. And they had been shouting at each other a bit, and she had slammed the door and gone in the other room, and he started pounding on the door, said he was going to break it down. And while this was going on, she called 911, and then he came in, and they just shouted at each other some more, and she had thought that she was in some physical danger. She wasn't. But in Denver, where this happened, The rules are, if you call 911 about a domestic, the police go anyway, even though she called back and said, I'm okay. And so now this gets in the paper, and Patrick is alleged to have done it. Patrick did not do any of this. He had an argument with his wife, and there was some door slamming. Probably not the first person in the world to do that, I think it's safe to say. Now, the one with Voinov, however, and then the other more recent one was Semyon Varlamov last year. You may remember he was charged with assault and kidnapping and all that sort of stuff. And what that was he was having a dispute over his own child with the mother of said child, and he had taken the child, and she apparently had custody on that day, and so he took the child and pushed her away. She said she was kicked and stomped. She wasn't. And he was charged with kidnapping his own child. So that all got straightened out. But again, the media built this one up, and so you hear these stories about these horrible things that hockey players have done that turn out not to be anything like the original story. This one, however, there may be something to this, because it's now coming from the police that Voinov was arrested at the hospital with the woman, and the woman had to go to hospital. So it would appear that he was involved in this, and the date has been set for December the 1st. That's, as of today, they set that date, December the 1st, and he has been suspended indefinitely by the league. Now, fortunately, the league doesn't have to use this provision very often, because, as I say, it doesn't happen very often in hockey. But when it does happen, you get automatically referred to another body within the organization that takes care of people who might have substance problems or behavioral problems, that sort of thing. So he's going to get immediate help in that sense. And, of course, he'll get legal help from the Players Association. Will take care of all this sort of stuff. But it is a serious thing, and it may turn out to be a black mark for hockey, and we'll just have to wait to see how that one unfolds. But I just wanted to give you some background into that one and to all these others. So we've got some other things to talk about, but we have a call from Andrew in Fredericton. Good evening, Andrew. How are you doing?
Great. How are you?
Excellent. This is John.
Andrew?
Yes. Hi there. Well, thanks for having me on the program. I wanted to get Al's impressions on the sticking. I guess you had just referenced Patrick Roy, sticking with Colorado and the Avalanche. I wanted to get your early impressions now that we're a week and a half into the season. It's still quite early, but Avalanche off to a slower start and having difficulty scoring goals, which wasn't the case last year. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I think they really missed Paul Stastny, first of all. He had a big impact on it. And I don't think yet they understand the fact that you don't get any points this year for what you did last year. And the other thing about last year was that they were outshot in almost every game, appreciably outshot. I think they were outshot by a greater margin than almost anybody in the game. And Semyon Varlamov kept them in it. And Varlamov hasn't been quite as healthy this year, and in fact is out of action right now. I know that Patrick is very good at handling kids. It's a very young team. You know, Nathan McKinnon and Jamie McGinn and Tyler, what's his name, people like that. Yeah, Tyson Barrie, great young defenseman. So when they're kids, they need more guidance, and apparently they were getting guidance today at a very, very high decibel rate from Mr. Roy. He ran a practice today that kept them very busy and left them absolutely no doubt as to what he expected of them. And so it'll be interesting to see. I was looking forward to seeing their next game. Where are they going next? Are they in Ottawa tomorrow?
I don't know, but they play tomorrow night, and I know that Varlamov, they say he'll be back to start.
Yeah, well, they need him for sure, although that kid played great. The kid from Winnipeg played great for him the other night.
Yeah, Jan Pickard.
Yeah, in Montreal. But I think they'll be a little bit more responsible tomorrow night, because Patrick certainly left no doubt whatsoever that he has not been happy with their performance so far. And I know Patrick very well, and this guy I don't think is as appreciated as he should be. He's a very, very smart guy, very intense guy, and leaves nothing to be done that needs to be done. He does it all, and he expects other people to do that as well. And if they're just floating and making mistakes and not really giving it their all, he won't be happy about that. In fact, he isn't happy about that. So I think they'll turn the corner a bit.
If you had a look at the Canadian teams in the National Hockey League this year, some of them are fairly weak. You'd have to look at Montreal as having a legit shot at making the playoffs. But what about the Calgary Flames? They seem to be have a lunch bucket mentality that really they just seem to be in almost every game, and they managed to pull off some points. What's your thoughts on their chances this year?
Well, so far that's been the case. They won, I think, they won, 3 or 4 on this road trip or whatever, and they've been playing that style, there's no doubt about it. But I don't think that style works that much anymore. The schedule's been good for them, but you look at the powerhouses in the West, and they're not that type of team. Yeah, Anaheim certainly isn't, LA isn't. I think Vancouver will be much improved. They're not that type of team, and I don't think that they can perpetuate that over the course of a season, especially for a Western team, because first of all, you're playing a lot of big teams out there. Those guys are big and fast out on the West Coast, and also the travel takes its toll. It's an 82-game season now, and the games are played almost like the NFL, and they play 16 or so. And it's a tough grind anymore in the National Hockey League. And you can do this at the start of the season, but I don't see them doing it, and I don't think they have enough talent to do it any other way. And I think that what you're seeing right now is a bit of an aberration. And they're really going to need the goaltending. I mean, maybe, what's the name, Rico Fata, is it, the goal?
Hiller.
Yeah. Well, they got Hiller, but I think Fata's the guy that they're really looking at to do something, and working with Allaire, the goal. Like, Hiller is a proven commodity, right?
Right.
But Fata, they got him working with Allaire, and they're hoping that he can develop. But you never know with that sort of thing, because he works for some guys, and he did a great job with J.S. Jaguar, but he certainly, Martin Brodeur walked away from him, wouldn't have anything to do with him. So it just depends. They're certainly going to need goaltending, and I don't think that they can keep it up all year long.
Just a final question, if you don't mind, and just to switch gears, the World Series is going on, and starts this week with the Giants and Royals. But taking a look at the Jays, do you think they have any shot of adding some higher-priced talent to help their pitching staff? I mean, the 3 big guys this summer will be James Shields and Max Scherzer and John Lester, but I think Toronto could really use some. All the teams are looking for added pitching help, but do you think the Jays have any chance of adding some people?
Well, do you think Kansas City needs to spend more money, or San Francisco? I don't think those two are big spending teams, are they?
No, they're not. But
so I don't think money is
to
the
cobble
answer.
Together enough pitching, I guess, consistently.
Well, I thought the Jays had a very good team at the beginning of the season. I thought it was very disappointing the way things went for them. They had some crucial injuries, and some of the guys didn't come through. But I think the Big Pen, they've got to get a closer. That's all you need. I don't see anything wrong with that starting staff, especially with the kids that they've got coming up. But you've got to have somebody that can close those games out, and they don't have one. They tried various guys, but it didn't work.
And Jansen's going to be a free agent, is my understanding.
Well, he was great until the All-Star break, wasn't he?
Yeah, and then he sort of ran out of gas.
Yeah. Which is understandable, I guess, when you've had so many years where you're not pitching a full season. So maybe they give him another crack. I don't know, but I thought that they had a pretty good team going into this year. I didn't think they needed to make an awful lot of changes. I think they just need to have things go right for them and stay healthy.
Fair enough. Well, I appreciate your time and
My
your
pleasure.
insights, and enjoy the rest of the winter months, and glad to hear you're in New Brunswick, because it's a beautiful place. And,
it is. It's a great secret in Canada, isn't it?
It is. Well, and the natural beauty that, and it's close to the United States too. People come up from Maine, and if you can do, and the nice part too is the highway was just renovated along Route 1 there between, really from Halifax all the way up to Moncton, St. John, Riverglade, right to the U.S. border at St. Stephen, and it's a safe highway, and it makes it nicer for tourists and people that want to come up here. But it is it's undersold, I guess.
I think it is. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for calling, and right now we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back in a minute.
At Fredericton Nissan, they're proud to say most of their staff have been here for over 20 years. So you know you're dealing with an experienced and trusted team of professionals in both sales and service. Fixing it right the first time. That's what it takes to be a Nissan technician. Drop by Fredericton Nissan at 580 Prospect Street and discover why Nissan is the fastest growing brand in Canada.
This is New Brunswick's independent community channel, CHCO-TV. We live in Charlotte County.
Welcome back. I'm Al Strachan. This is John Smith, who is one of our local people in the community here and a hockey fan. So it's a hockey show, and we're here to talk about it. If you want to buy my book, my latest book, there you go. This is the paperback edition. The hardcover got all sold out by last Christmas and stuff, but the paperback just came out. You can buy it all over Canada. You can get the ebook on Amazon or on Kobo or any of those. You can buy it in chapters, Indigo, whatever. And feel free to buy as many as you want so I can spend more time in Florida. We've been talking about a number of things. Give him your theory then about Calgary. He wants to relate it to basketball. Now, I know nothing about basketball, so.
If you compare, say, the basketball last year, San Antonio won the basketball championship, and they played very well as a team, more of a team mentality. Let's get the open guy the shot. And if Calgary plays to the system rather than where they don't have any superstar, or any real superstar to get them the puck, if they play the team system, I think they may play very well because they seem to work hard.
But I presume this team had some guys who could shoot pretty well.
They did, yeah.
And does Calgary?
No. But Hiller may steal you a few games, but
okay.
Not too many, I don't think. But
how many points does Stajan have so far?
2, 3? Not very many.
I think that's 2 or 3 more than he's actually got.
He hasn't played very well.
So anyway, we'll try and keep you up to date on some of the news here around what's going on around the league, because if you watch TV these days, you miss a lot of it. You may have caught that really, really hot scoop from Damien Cox the other night that Chris Pronger's number in junior is going to be retired, and I'd forgotten that. I read it on the OHL website a month ago, but I'd forgotten that, so that was a pretty hot one there. But what was going on this weekend that nobody on Hockey Night in Canada mentioned or anywhere else that I know of is that there were a lot of people from the National Hockey League Players Association, including Don Fehr himself, who's the head guy in Los Angeles. And the reason that they're there is that the Kings, with this being a glitzy area and Hollywood, et cetera, they're all big into theatrics. They've decided that when you go to a hockey game, it should be a similar experience to going to the theater. And so they put in all these new LED lights around, and they use those and turn them off when the game starts. And the result is that theoretically, you have this rink in front of you, it's all there, and it's all dark around it. Nice effect, but apparently none of these lighting geniuses considered the concept of a black puck against a black background, which is what you get if you shoot high. So the players are saying, whoa, wait a minute, this is extremely dangerous to us. I mean, you can imagine the way some of these guys shoot, and the puck is coming in high. Even sometimes you rim it around the glass, and you don't know where it's going to go, and it's now black against black. And the PA considers this to be very dangerous, and they had all their hot shots, as I say, from Fehr on down in Los Angeles on the weekend. I think you're probably going to hear more about that one. That's going to come to an end, I think, because Gary, of course, is so concerned about player safety, as we know. And the other thing, this is an interesting one. Coaches talk about a lot of things that they don't really tell the media about until there's a need to do so. And then they tell their general managers, and then the general managers bring it up at one of their meetings, which is usually held in a hockey hotbed like Las Vegas or Palm Springs, those kind of places. And they discuss it. And way back when, even before my time, strangely enough, guys would play hockey in the evening. They'd have a practice, and then they'd come back and play the next night or whatever. They didn't have morning skates. They saw no need for morning skates, but it started around the 60s because hockey players occasionally had the tendency to go out and drink beer after games and things like that, and even sometimes on the off days. And the coaches figured, well, if these guys are out drinking half the night, then when they come to the rink the next night for the game, they're not in really good shape. They're spending too much time in the bars. So what we'll do, we'll have morning skates. So now that's a staple in hockey. Every morning, pretty well, there is a skate, game days included. And guys usually go to them. They're very rarely optional. They're usually lighter, but they are there, and the guys have to go to the rink. And even when they're optional, you'll find, the stars will go anyway. Gretzky never missed a morning skate, even days he wasn't skating, because he knew that people would want to talk to him, so he'd go there. So these guys have to get up in the morning, get dressed, and this is another complaint they have. This one I just thought of it. This one wasn't on the list, but I just thought of it. These guys say they get sick of dressing and undressing. Because you get up in the morning, you get dressed, you go down to breakfast. Then you go down to the rink, you get undressed, you put on your hockey stuff. You have your hockey skate quickly, take your hockey stuff off, get dressed again. You go back to the hotel, you have your lunch, and then you get undressed, you have your nap in the afternoon, you get up, you get dressed again to go to the game. When you get undressed, to put your hockey outfit on, and then after the game you take that off to get dressed again. The number of times they get dressed and undressed in a day, they say, they really get kind of tired of this, but needless to say, for a few million a year they put up with it. But anyway, the point is that now some of these coaches are saying, look, we don't need these morning skates. And why are we doing this? These guys today, this is not like the 60s. Guys don't drink anymore like that. I mean, they'll drink if the occasion arises, but it doesn't arise like that anymore. And when the average salary is $2 million a year, guys are not going to jeopardize the chances of that by showing up half drunk. Now, there have been guys during my era that would come to the morning skate and they were still pickled from the night before. But that doesn't happen much anymore. And furthermore, what happens now is that they leave on charters. It used to be that they would stay in the town, and then they'd go to the bar and then get up early in the morning, drag themselves down to the bus and go out to the airport and fly commercial somewhere. But now there's a charter leaving right after the game, takes you to the next city, so you're not going to be in the bars. And you're in the next city now, and it's morning, and so, now you have to go to the morning skate, for what? So there are coaches that are talking about doing away with this, and I don't know what that's going to do to the coverage of the game. The way the game is played, as I was saying before when we were talking about Calgary playing that style, it's tough to play 82 games these days. Really, really tough. And so it might make the games better, but I don't notice any slowness among these teams. They're playing hard all the time now anyway, so I don't think eliminating the morning skate would do anything. But anyway, it is a topic, and you're probably going to hear more about it in the foreseeable future.
What about Florida Panthers? I seen their opening night attendance, I think, was less than 10,000. Yeah.
Well, I live not too far from there, and I go to their games when I'm down in Florida. And
are they relocating?
No, I don't think so. See, I'm not there. I'm here.
I just don't understand how the NHL could warrant less than 10,000 at a hockey game when the tickets are probably half the price that they would be in a Canadian market, which would sell out.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I am here, and I'm not at those hockey games. And a lot of Canadians are like me. The Canadians haven't got down there yet. That's a very, very popular part of Florida for the snowbirds. There are certain sections around down there. There's a French language newspaper. There's so many Quebecois down there. We have a friend who lives near us, and we went out, had a couple of drinks with him last year. He lives there for 6 months of the year. He speaks no English. There's so many Quebecois down there, and they go to those games. And there's a lot of other Canadians that go to those games. And at this time of the year, they're still in Canada, because you're only allowed to go to Florida for 6 months of the year.
Okay.
So they'll wait, and they'll go for December or whatever, and then so they'll be there later. So that's a big factor.
That'll boost up some attendance. That'll boost up attendance.
It will. It'll boost it considerably. Yeah, like we've already bought our 6-pack, and friends of ours have bought them and stuff like that. You can buy these now, and that will boost it a lot. The other thing is, it's been a bad team, and they've got new owners though. And the new owners want to do something about this, and I think that they've got good management there, and I think that they'll be going in the right direction. They've got some good young players there, and once they start to win, it's like anywhere else. You're never going to have a big crowd if you're an awful team.
Unless you're the Leafs.
Yeah, well,
And then
okay,
you can
sorry
still
about that.
charge
Yeah, I forgot.
$365 a ticket.
Very good point there. Yeah. John's going to take this show over. He knows more about this than I do. Very good. But when Florida made the Stanley Cup Finals, what year was it?
2000 was it? Or 99?
I was there. I don't remember.
Yeah.
They beat Colorado, and anyway, it was packed. You couldn't get a seat there, and that was when they were throwing the rats on the ice, and it was a big thing. And so it was. In fact, it was Scott Mellenby that we were talking about earlier who killed the rat in the dressing room that started the concept of throwing plastic rats. And it was so much fun throwing rats, and everybody liked it so much. Gary made it illegal, of course, and said if you keep throwing rats, we're going to cost you the game and stuff. So anyway, but hockey took off when they were winning, and it was the same. Look at Los Angeles. You know, you couldn't.
Or even Chicago too. Chicago struggled there for a few years.
Oh, they were terrible there until they started to win. Los Angeles Kings for 30 years or something couldn't draw anybody till Gretzky went there and they started winning. So wherever you have a winning team, they'll go. They're not selling many tickets in Colorado anymore.
No, I heard Vancouver's consecutive home opening, or not home opening, the consecutive sellouts are for at-home sellouts is over now as well.
Yeah,
it was 449 games or something that they had consecutively sold out.
Yeah. But I think they'll be better. I think they'll start a new string soon. When I went to Calgary, I moved to Calgary in 1988, and there were people then who were talking about selling season tickets for an incredibly inflated price. You couldn't get a season ticket at the Saddle Dome, and people were talking about willing them to the next generation. It wasn't many years after that before there were whole empty sections in the Calgary Saddle Dome. So it comes and goes. So if they can win, I think they'll be all right. And the other thing is that Gary Bettman just absolutely loathes moving teams.
Well, unless they're from a Canadian market, he didn't mind moving them to this.
Well, Ziegler moved the first one, and then the other one going down, that was already sort of in motion when he came in '93. So
can't hold him to fault then.
No. And the Atlanta moved back to Canada, to Winnipeg, and that was only because Gary beat the Bushes in the United States. He couldn't find a single person who would take that team, and believe me, he tried everywhere, and they couldn't find anybody to take it in the United States, so he went up there.
Do you think there will ever be more Canadian teams?
We won in Quebec.
Quebec again?
Yeah.
No, and not another Toronto team?
No, well, it's not on the list at the moment. I mean, you know, all I can tell you is what people are talking about in hockey circles. Right now, they're talking about 2 teams coming in, and there are 3 cities: Seattle, Las Vegas, and Quebec. And, you know, the musical chair is where it stops. We'll see. I understand that Las Vegas is getting one for sure, and that will be announced next summer. And then the big rush is on to try and get
an arena in
Seattle,
isn't it?
Yeah. And but Quebec's arena is almost built, and there's a lot of support in Quebec for that.
Oh, the Nordiques were awesome.
They were, but it's TV money.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing. They can sell it.
Canada, it's pretty well. I wouldn't just classify the Leafs. I'm pretty sure most Canadian markets can sell out even if they're losing.
And I don't know what the reasoning is really, but I know that a Toronto team's not on anybody's list.
No.
At all.
Wouldn't that be something? They get another Toronto team, and the other Toronto team win the cup before the Leafs.
Like the Islanders did.
It'd start a riot.
Excuse me. We were talking before we started this about you used to be a hockey player, but you had to stop doing it because it was too expensive.
Yeah.
Is that common?
I believe so. A lot of my friends weren't really able to afford hockey. It's just, like you said, it is a very expensive sport. New Brunswick really isn't the richest place around.
No,
it's a lot of minimum wage jobs or menial jobs, I guess, for a lot of people. And
yeah.
So it does get expensive, especially if it's a single parent anywhere around Canada. I know there are a lot of programs now, though. Canada is good with that. Canadian Tire, I think, has got some good programs for people that do have issues with payments.
Well, it is a
and stuff.
concern. And, you know, the Players Association is involved, and they will, excuse me, send equipment out.
Okay.
And Kraft, I guess it is, will help build arenas. And lottery money was supposed to go for that. But it costs you, I understand, more than $20,000 a year for a kid to play hockey in the larger centers.
Yeah.
If you're in Toronto
That's
or someplace
crazy.
like
Just
that.
with all the traveling and then registration and tournaments.
And all the equipment. And, you know, you look at the equipment that they use, and that brings up one of my favorite points. That it upsets me so much, this and as usual, in many of these things that upset me, and I never professed to know an awful lot about hockey, but I know the people who do, and I talk to them a lot, and they make a lot of sense, and that's how I get a lot of these ideas that I put forth here. And this one, Wayne Gretzky agrees with me absolutely, totally. There's no need to have composite sticks in hockey anywhere, and there's definitely no need to have them in kids hockey.
No. Well, they're $300 a stick.
Yeah.
Or more.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a couple of days' work for some people, or 4 or 5 days' work. If you're working minimum wage, it's $10 an hour.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And even the pros can't handle these things very well. They give you a big shot, is what the composite stick will do. So if you got a 90-mile-an-hour shot, now you can hit it 105 or whatever. You can break the glass with it and scare goalies and have it ding off the pipes, and it's wonderful. But you don't know where it's going. Think of how many times, and I noticed especially in the playoffs last year, because you know you're watching it more intently maybe in the playoffs, how many times you see a guy 10 or 15 feet in front of the net and he misses the net. Why is he missing the net? Because those composite sticks, you never know where it's going to go. They bend so much, it's whippy, you know. It's like using a hammer with a rubber handle. You know, you don't know where this thing's going to come down. And the wooden sticks were fine. Al McInnes won the hardest shot for years and years after the composite sticks were introduced using a wooden stick. If you know how to use it, because even the wooden sticks these days, they're not really wood, right? There's compressed foam inside them. And so you don't need this composite stuff, and you certainly don't need it for kids. Would it be that hard, really, to have the people who run minor hockey say, all right, kids, in minor hockey, you must use a wooden stick?
Why not?
Why not?
It wouldn't be, I agree, it wouldn't be that hard to do.
No.
They've grandfathered in the visors now, I do believe, so that it's going to be mandatory. So if you can do something like that, why not with the wooden sticks?
Yeah.
I did see an episode on Sportsnet, I believe, where it was they gave wooden sticks to like Jordan Eberle and players like that for them to try it.
Yeah.
And they couldn't really stick handle that well. They said it was heavy and the puck seemed to bounce off their stick a lot more. But he said the passing and everything was a lot more accurate.
Okay. Well, I've heard from guys that taking the passes is harder because they don't look.
Yeah.
Like Al McInnes, for instance, I was talking to about earlier. I said, why don't you use one? You know, you got the way you hit it now. He said, when I stand at the point, and he said, I want to see what's going on, and the puck is coming back to me. I can't look down now and see where the puck is because the game is so fast that the checkers are coming out so quickly. I've got to know that puck is there and get rid of it. He said, I can't do that with a composite stick because when the puck hits the stick, it'll bounce.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons I think that we're seeing fewer goals these days. And there are a lot of reasons, but that is one of them because guys can't control the thing as much. How many good passes do you see? How often do you see 3 passes in succession? Because they can't do it. So
It doesn't happen as often anymore.
No. And, you know, like Gretzky said to me that all the coaches in the league would love to see them banned. So if the NHL wants to see them banned, and we can see no good reason not to ban them in kids hockey, why doesn't somebody get it done? You know, but you know, they say some of them will say, well, the kids can do what they want. They can use wood if they want. It's just because some kids on the team use composite. Come on, you kidding me? You got a kid that's got a wooden stick and half the team has composites. Everybody else has a stick. I don't have one, you know. And you can't do that. You try to give your kid the best. If everybody's got a composite stick, you're not sending your kid out with a $30 wooden one when they've all got $300 composites.
No, exactly.
And so this jacks the prices up. So anyway, that's my rant on that point for today. And let's see, Oh, Chris, there's still people are upset about Chris Pronger still. We talked about this a bit last week, you know, and this is another one of these things. So much goes on behind the scenes here, you know, and nothing happens in the National Hockey League of any consequence unless Gary wants it to happen. Never think for a minute that this guy just sits in New York and sits back and lets things happen. He controls every general manager that's hired. He controls every president that's hired. He controls every major move. If you may remember, in the last Gary imposed lockout, not the last one, was the one before, the one in 2004, I guess it was, that Bob Goodenow started off as being the president of the PHWA, not PHWA, the NHLPA. And then there was a revolt led by about 4 or 5 players who went to New York, who talked to Gary, who said, we can get rid of him, we can do all these things. These people basically submarined their own union and ended up selling out, and they got the salary cap that Bob didn't want to. Well, one of them was Trevor Linden, president of the Vancouver Canucks now. One of them was Brendan Shanahan, president of the Toronto Maple Leafs. One of them was Chris Pronger, just got a nice new job with the league and everything. And the other one, who's probably winding down his career, and you watch, he's going to get a really, really nice job, Jerome McGinley. And he's now got probably 1 season left, and then he'll get a nice job too. So. Anyway, this was good, clean fun tonight. I'm not sure whether we're going to do another one next week. Maybe I should turn it over to John. He's better at this than I am. And this was John Smith. I'm Al Strachan. I hope you enjoyed the show. Good night.
Thank you.